Hey everyone, it's Butter and welcome back to my channel. Today I just wanted to do a quick video about how to prepare for your first apartment. So if I'm looking down, it's because I have my notebook here and I just wrote down like a few tips. In total, there's about 10 tips. They're in no specific order. I just wrote them down how they came into my head. So when I got my first apartment by myself, it was a couple months after college, which was kind of a few months into the pandemic, and I started preparing for it during my last year of college because I knew once college ended that I wanted to get my own place. The apartment I have now is my second apartment that I've had on my own. I've liked both of the apartments I've had. The first one was definitely larger. It was 752 square feet and it was only me. It was a one-bedroom apartment. So it was pretty big and I don't think I realized it. In my head when I was moving, I had it set in my mind that I needed a one-bedroom because I thought if I had a studio that I would lay in bed all day and I would never get out of my bed. We'll get into that later. I definitely think that wasn't the case. And now that I have a studio, I definitely think it's more cozy and it's definitely easier to decorate, easier to clean. There's a lot of benefits to a studio, so I guess I'll just say that now. Really think about your needs and your wants as far as space goes. And I wouldn't roll off a studio. You know yourself better than anyone, but if I could go back in time, I would tell myself don't just kind of write off studios. I do love the apartment I'm in so much more. I mean, that is the goal, to kind of learn what you like and then always grow from there. But the other apartment I had was in a great city. It was very safe, very nice city, but there was not much to do for people in their 20s. Like my friend came over and we were looking for like bars to go to and it was very hard to find like the scene that we were looking for. And the city I'm in now is definitely more lively. I go outside and there's plenty to do, which is why I really love it here and I really love vlogging, and it actually made me want to be more outdoorsy. Now I'm just gonna kind of get into the tips because I think I'm kind of like going off and talking about the tips that I'm gonna get to anyway. So my first tip would be to narrow down a city. I think that kind of helps the search immensely. How close do you want to be to family? How far do you want to be to family? Does that not matter to you? What are you looking for? Does nightlife matter to you? Outdoors? Do you want a quiet neighborhood? And then also you need to factor in with that your commute to work, if that is a factor for you, of how far you're willing to go. And I would say be very realistic about that. I know that rent prices have a lot to do with it depending on the city, but I was commuting about an hour 15 minutes to work and it was fine for a while, but now being so much closer, I really realized the toll it was taking. So I would say be very realistic about the commute you're willing to take to work. And then after you narrow down a city, I would say lightly browse what's available in that area just so you can see pricing and get an idea of your style. So there's a lot of different apartment styles and I would definitely just start looking, just lightly browse, not even very seriously. Comment down below if you're interested in the apps that I use to look or websites I use to also look at apartments. But my second tip would be to make a list of your must-haves. So by that I mean, do you need an apartment that's dog friendly? Do you need a washer and dryer in unit? And do you want appliances included? That's something that's like a deal breaker for me. Like I need the fridge, I need the stove to be included. And then also, do you want like a gym, a pool? Just make a list of all of your must-haves. The third tip that I have would be to figure out your budget. What I did was I wrote down everything in detail. I started off with my income after taxes at the top, and then I went and listed what my rent would be, what my bills throughout the month would be, including like Netflix, like Apple Music if you have that, all of those things, also like gas, electricity, write down all of what you expect that to be and just kind of like land on a budget. Also write down how much you would want to save per month so that you can kind of have an idea of where you'd be landing each month while also growing a savings and while also having that spending money to enjoy the new city that you're in. So if you are able to, I would say save up a couple months rent at least just to have, and just be prepared to like just have that there ready to go just in case anything were to happen with your job. And another thing with the budget is to not forget about moving costs. So what are you gonna need as far as like a U-Haul, movers, things like hanging your TV on the wall, hanging shelves on the wall. If you're gonna need people to do that, you wanna also calculate that in too, because all that does play a part. And then even with the budget, yes, there's that specific rent, but then on top of that, your first fees are like the security deposit and all of that. So you want to factor all that in too. And I would say also save that in advance, which I think we'll get into within the next few tips. Okay, so I kind of combined my tip 4 with tip 3, but tip 4 was don't forget about moving costs, renting a U-Haul, security deposit. And then my 5th tip would be to prepare your credit. This almost got me. I started about a year before when I knew I wanted to get my own place while I was still in college. And if you only have one credit card or even more, confirm what bureaus they report to. And I would even like, if you have a couple apartments in mind, call and ask what credit bureau that they run when they run your application. Because I almost messed up because I got a specific card and I didn't know much about credit bureaus, and I didn't know that there's 3 of them. And this is for the United States, by the way. I'm not sure how it is in other countries, but I found out that my card was only reporting to one bureau at the time. And so for the other ones, it popped up that I had no credit. So that actually pushed back my moving date a lot because I then needed to do some research.
By research, I mean ask my mom.
I then needed to do some research and find out what card would report to all 3 bureaus, and then I needed to apply for that card, get that card, put a balance on that card, and pay it off. Prepare your credit, pay off whatever you need to pay off, because it will be a factor in if you're approved or not in the long run. So while you're just preparing everything else and looking for places, that should also be another thing that you're working on. So tip 5 again is prepare your credit. The 6th tip is to have a list of questions prepared to ask while you're being toured, or even beforehand while you're on the phone setting up a tour. And I would really say don't be shy about it. I'll list some of the questions that I asked that I can remember. I'm not sure if they're all on this list, but I'll read the ones that I remembered and wrote down. So when I tour apartments, I ask what utilities are included. What's the pet rent? I don't have any pets. It is something that I might be interested in the future, so I wanted to find out what the pet rent was. And then what are the amenity hours? And is there any cost to rent out the amenities? For example, if you want to have like a housewarming or anything and you want to have it at the amenities because the apartment might be too small to accommodate that amount of people, then you want to know in advance if there's a cost to rent out those amenities. And then another thing I would ask, it's not very important, but if there's valet trash. My first apartment had valet trash, which is basically where between certain times of certain days, you set your trash outside the door in a specific manner, and the people will come along and pick it up. I do not prefer valet trash because I noticed in my first apartment how dirty it made the hallways look, because they do have a specific way that the trash should be placed outside. But obviously everyone's not going to follow that, and sometimes they get the days confused and just the trash is sitting outside people's doors for a long time, and it kind of actually makes the hallway stink, and just the overall look of the apartment, it's not really ideal. Another question would be, is parking extra? So if you need a parking spot, or how many, how much that would cost you per month, and if that would be added onto your rent. I would also ask about guest parking, and I would ask to be shown where that guest parking was. This is something I didn't do in my first apartment, and I asked the agent while I was being toured if there's guest parking, because it was listed on their website under the amenities or something like that. And she kind of blew off the question. She was like, yeah, there's guest parking, but I didn't ask to see where it was. And it kind of turned out like there really was not guest parking. I guess what she was referring to was when the leasing office is not open, cars can park in those like few spots and there's only 5 of them. So there is really no guest parking. And I would suggest if you do ask that, and if that is something that you need, if you live in a city where parking is pretty hard to find on the street, then I would ask to be shown that guest parking if it is available to you. And then I would also ask about safety. That would be on the list of questions, and just kind of ask like, oh, does the apartment have many break-ins? What about cars? I'm sure even if it's not the best answer, they're gonna try to sell you on it. So I would just still ask and kind of gauge their response, and then also ask if the building has security, and if so, what are security's hours? Also, another question to ask is how to pay rent and when, and how long is the courtesy amount that you can pay rent. For some apartments, it's like 4 days or something like that before the late fees start to tag on and before it actually starts impacting your credit. So I would kind of ask about how and when to pay rent, and then also how do you put in non-emergent maintenance requests. So like if your shower drain's getting clogged or anything small like that, who do you talk to? Who do you call? How do you put that request in? And then one very important thing to ask is about rent specials and if you qualify for any. Depending on the time that you move, some apartments will offer like 1 month free or 2 months free, something like that. My first apartment offered, it was either 8 weeks or 6 weeks free, and they really did give it to me, so it really does help. So that might be another thing to consider during the time of your move. Their rent specials are less common when it's busy moving time, like during summer, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I think that might be accurate. And they're more common when people are less likely to be moving. So definitely just always ask, no matter what time of year you're moving, if there's rent specials available. My 7th tip would be to pay attention during the tour and take pictures and videos. Just like notice if they try to close the blinds or move you away from a specific area, and make sure you just notice everything. That's why it's also important to take videos so you can look later and see anything you may have missed. Also during your tour, just pay attention to the demographics of the apartment. Legally, where I am, they can't really get into the demographics, but I'm not sure if it's like that everywhere, but it doesn't hurt if you just like kind of pay attention to see if that's like the age group or whatever it may be that you're looking for around that apartment. And if you can, I would also say interact with the people that live there. Probably not when the leasing agent's right there, but if you get to walk around alone and just like meet someone in the elevator, ask them how you like that. I've also done that too, and it kept me away from moving to places that I was on the fence about because the people there were not happy with their experience. My 8th tip would be drive by the property at night and explore the area on the weekends if you're looking for nightlife. Just kind of like drive by if you have time at night and see if this area is specifically what you're looking for, if it's safe, if you'd like it. If you don't have parking, just see what the parking's like at that time if you have to park on the street. And just pay attention to everything that might actually affect you if you were to live there. You don't want anything to kind of catch you off guard once you're already signed into a 6 to 12 month lease. The 9th tip I have, and I think this one is not as common, is to look on the building that you're interested in. Look them up on Yelp and see what their reviews are, and also see their pictures, because there is often positivity on Yelp if something's like really good, and that's great to see. That might actually encourage you to continue on with your application to that place. But there's also people that are brutally honest with their pictures about apartments being dirty, apartments not being safe. Another thing is to look up the building on YouTube and see if you can just see like if anyone toured it, if anyone posted it. You can even do this before you go to tour the property just to see if it's worth your time and see what other people's thoughts on it are, or just see what units are available on YouTube. A lot of companies are taking to YouTube now to kind of post and share what the apartment has as far as current spaces available and amenities and all of that. So I would check out the YouTube as well. And my 10th tip would be, if it's possible, and I highly recommend this, it would be to view the specific unit that you would be wanting to move into. And if someone's living there at the time, if you can, try to see the unit before you sign the official lease. Like, you can apply if you're pretty sure and you're sold on everything else, but try to see the unit before you sign the lease just to make sure it's everything that you want. And also, when you do finally get that lease agreement, I know it's pretty long, but read through everything before you sign it just so you can be clear on how your new apartment home runs. Lastly, this is not really a tip, but I would just say if you're gonna move out and get your own place, just make sure you're ready. Make sure it's something that you really want, because I know, like, on social media, a lot of people are getting their own apartments, and it's really nice to like share the keys and have your own space, but there's a lot that goes into it on the back end of living alone and supporting yourself. So I honestly, I think it's really great to live at home and stack if that's a healthy environment for you for as long as you can. But if you're ready to get your own place, just kind of really check in with yourself, especially if you're going to be living alone, to figure out if that's something you're ready for. I'm a very quiet person. I don't think I really need to talk much, but my siblings are very loud, and like, so living alone and like not even having college roommates, it's like sometimes when I wake up, I need to tell myself like, hey, you haven't talked today. Like, let's just say a couple words and warm up the vocal cords. I would just say make sure it's something you really want for yourself, and don't be pressured into doing something by social media because you want to be like the people you see with their own place and all of that. You're not on anyone else's timeline. Do what feels right for you. Do what feels like you're prepared for. Take 2. When my first apartment